Thank you. Thank you so much. I was struggling to find my mic there.
Okay.
I've got one for Prof. Linda. And thank you so much to both speakers for a wonderful lessons. Um, I wish there was more time. Um, Prof. Now, I was thinking as you are talking, having come from industry myself before academia. So I'm looking at all these technologies that you looked at with your team, and I am wondering that, say for example, in the technologies where the country say they are still adopting, still in the adopting stage, and they are still far from catching on with that new technology. Well, it's, some of them I see that they're not exactly new, but maybe there's something new about them that we still need to adopt. um, should we rather look at perfecting what we've got, or should we be looking at changing it altogether? I don't know if that's kind of making sense. So, should we look at new ways of doing these things, or should we capitalize on what we've got because we are already better set up for it? Should we look at making the process perfect, or should we adopt whatever is being sent to us to say, now this is a new way of doing it? Or should we say, no, we've got something that functions. Now we're just going to perfect it to meet whatever standard that we want. And another one is the call closed already?
Thanks. I'll answer your second question first. Yes, it is. We've already been through the review process and we've awarded 8 projects that are starting in January, but we'll look to hopefully have a call, obviously dependent upon the availability of funding, but we should hopefully have a call each year around about June for the following year. So we'll be announcing soon which of the 8 projects we're actually funding. With regards to your first question, it's a really great question, and I don't think it's an either or. I think it's probably a combination of both of those. I think at the heart of it, at the heart of the circular economy, it's really around how we utilize our resources. It's around being more efficient, it's around being more sufficient, it's around being sustainable in our resource use. And I think there are probably some areas where we have a long track record, like the water sector, for example, where it makes sense for us to perhaps perfect what we have. It works for our particular conditions. We know how it works. And so rather, how do we scale up what we've got for meaningful impact? But there are other areas, I'm thinking around the manufacturing sector, where many industries just haven't invested in new technology as it's become available. There's some sectors that are feeling, slightly outdated when it comes to technologies. And then the question becomes, how do we remain globally competitive as a manufacturing sector when we haven't actually stayed up to date in investing in the latest technologies? And there, I think the question becomes, it's this question around, well, do our publicly funded research institutions spend research funding to develop new technology, in which case sometimes it's sort of reinventing the wheel? Or do we rather focus our energy and effort on inbound technologies and how we adapt and localize technologies? And sometimes I get very frustrated. I think because I sit in the role as a funder, I get very frustrated where we reinvent the wheel. It's like, how many times do we need to develop a new anaerobic digester when we could actually plug and play these technologies into South Africa? And I understand that for universities, there's an element of skills development, of human capital development that comes with reinventing the technology, because the student gets to see how it works, etc., etc. But at the same time, given the fact that we have such limited research funding in South Africa, I personally would rather look to see how we adapt and localize inbound technologies for South African conditions. How do we take proven technologies off the shelf and adapt and customize them to South Africa to achieve impact? Because I think we've been very slow in some of these areas to adopt technologies and to scale technologies. And I think this provides us with a fast track route to be able to do that. So I don't think it's necessarily an either or. I think we need to, where it makes sense, to do it. But I think we've got to be very careful around, wasting research funding, given that it's very scarce. And I think that as research institutions, we have an incredibly important role to play in South Africa's development and the adoption and de-risking of interventions, including, technologies and social innovations. Thank you. I think maybe if, while we're waiting for a question to come in, I think one of probably the biggest challenges that we have when it comes to the circular economy is just the very fragmented nature of it. And I think this speaks across all of our universities and science councils. It tends to sit within specific faculties or specific departments or within specific science councils. So, MinTech will focus on one thing, the Agricultural Research Council will focus on another. And the thing about the circular economy is it requires both this deep dive into the sector, but also very much the systems approach to addressing sustainable resource management. And somehow, I think there are other areas like that as well, like climate change, for example. We've got to find better ways of actually working together as research institutions. It doesn't come easy to us, I don't always think. I think sometimes there are a lot of obstacles that are put in our way to be able to do that. But really, if we're going to address these big challenges that are facing us as a society, we've got to be working collaboratively and we've got to be working across those silos. And that also speaks to policy. How do we develop appropriate policy that actually provides a systems perspective to addressing these issues?
Absolutely. Yes. So there was an interesting point that Marion made about the cathode ray tubes, and that you've got the furnace technology to be able to repurpose, reuse them, recycle them, but not enough stored or recovered. Can you tell us a bit more about that, Marion?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, considering that we don't really have any policies in place that would force people to recycle the cathode ray tubes, so we just don't have enough mass, enough material to develop the technology further, and then also to be able to create that economy. So you essentially, in order for you to do the urban mining, you actually need to have a mine. So we have no current mine. So you'd have in other countries where recycling is very important, or it's an important policy, it's standard, people, as part of their culture, where recycling does happen, you then have enough material to mine from. So that is essentially the issue that we have there. Even for us, when we were doing the research, we had to go knock on doors and ask industries for enough material for us to do the research. So it's not like, I know that there's the eGov is developing an e-waste program, but there hasn't been great developments there, in a sense that we have enough material to do more research in the space and then also to develop that economy.
Right. Are we talking about old TVs here?
Yes. Old TVs, all types of monitors that you're working with. There's just a range of electronic equipment that one could look at. But because we don't, if you think about what you have in your home or in your workplace, none of that gets really recycled. We don't even know where those things go.
No.
It ends up in the landfills. So, yeah. I think there definitely is opportunity for us to just restructure ourselves around how we manage our waste in order for us to then better develop these technologies.
Yes, indeed. And at the same time, there are so many people who are unemployed and who really need the opportunity to gather e-waste and get a bit of money for it.
Absolutely. There's a really great potential there.
Thank you. Can you also tell us a little bit more about the phyto-extraction and the community field trial that you had or are running?
So that is essentially my PhD project that I'm working on. And I've been working with a couple of communities to see, I've been using sunflowers, and we've also been using kenaf, and currently we are busy testing some Indian mustard. So there is a range of hypercumulator plants that can accumulate these metals in various forms, some of it in its roots, in the stems, as well as the leaves. And we're looking for the plants that would essentially extract these metals from the tailings dumps into either the roots or the stems. And then we would then reprocess that material. There's a whole flow sheet that has been developed by the Australians. So we would then just be adopting that flow sheet to then extract the metal. So that metal can then be sold for further applications in the metal industry. But then obviously we are hoping to have like a two-pronged approach where you're actually extracting the more hazardous metal as well to clean up the environment. So that project is still very much in its infancy stages. It's in its second year. So the field trial was run this year. That's quite successful. But we need to run a few cycles before we can actually deem it as a feasible way of cleaning up the environment, and then also at the same time be able to develop secondary or adjacent economies from that.
Right. That is fascinating, because presumably you'll have some biomass once you've extracted the heavy metals from the plants.
Absolutely. And then the hope is that once we're not necessarily going to get the most perfect soil. I mean, it takes about 1,000 years in order for you to get your tailings dump to having a really good fabricated soil. But we're hoping that we'd give enough nutrition to the material that you'd be able to then plant other crops, mostly fiber crops is what we're considering, not necessarily crops for human consumption in a sense of eating, but more in the sense of the fiber crops that you could use for construction space.
Okay.
So there's a lot of potential once we've been able to remove the hazardous metal to actually use that land in a more constructive way.
Yes. That is fascinating. We've come to the end of our program. Thank you very much, Ms. Manuel and Prof. Godfrey. That was fascinating, and I think in a way the circular economy issues have drawn together some of the other issues that have been discussed throughout the day. Certainly manufacturing and mining are involved, doing something with waste materials, the relationship with the water sector, with the energy sector. It has, for me, it's opened up those connections and associations with the other sectors that have been fairly discrete and separated throughout the day. So thank you very much indeed for your presentations and sharing of your extensive experience. Thank you to all our speakers, to those who were present here with us today, and all of those online as well. We appreciate the time you've taken. We appreciate that the second half of the year is an incredibly busy, demanding time. And so we're very aware that you have sacrificed time to be with us today. It has been a very productive discussion, and I think that everyone will see that the Science Councils, the research institutions, innovative institutions have so much to contribute to South Africa's economy and to its development as a whole. Tomorrow, we are starting at 9 o'clock again, and then we're going to discuss innovation and the generation of small business in the morning, and then the SET, Science, Engineering, Technology, Society interface in the afternoon. And these will be very interesting presentations and discussions in their own right. And I'm hoping that we can pick up some of the threads and themes from today as well in these discussions tomorrow. You will be receiving a survey online. Please rate today's event and the individual speakers, I want to assure you that the speakers are not told their individual ratings, because basically we want to assess the overall success of the discussion events and ensure that we maintain the quality that we are known for. Then everything will be available on the NSDF website. The presentations, depending on the permission of the speakers, will be available on the website, or they perhaps are already, Vilna, they're already available on the website. So please have a look at our website, nsdf.org.za, and it should be quite prominent on a slider there, the topic of these 2 days of discussions. We will also be producing a media release, which will be a summary of the presentations or a summary of the issues that are being discussed. We're hoping that this takes the discussions forward in terms of government funding and what government priorities should be. I might mention that with the National Development Plan, although the words research and innovation are not mentioned perhaps as often as they should have been, there is a lot that relates to the research and innovation landscape in the NDP. And so please have a look at the NSDF website. There is a summary of the National Development Plan there also, and it's under policy news. And there is an unpacking of the sections that are relevant to research and innovation. It is very much the case that research and innovation is on the national agenda of the government. It's firmly ensconced there. And so don't let social media or anyone mislead you in that regard. It is still highly relevant and extremely important. With that, I wish you a good evening and safe journey home if you're traveling. And we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Goodbye.